Oh, my dear cult members, it is the month that we have all been waiting for. This is the time of year when us spooky season lovers are at our most powerful. Not only our most powerful, but also obviously at our most sexy. If you're new here, you might be thinking, oh cute, she put up all these decorations for Halloween. Wrong. It is actually Halloween all year round on this channel. However, because I do recognize that I live in a society, this is the time when most other people also feel spooky. So I decided to make an October watchlist challenge. I feel like a lot of the ones that I see online are really basic, like watch a movie that's a slasher, watch a movie with a haunted house. I wanted to make one that was a lot more clever and a lot more weirdly specific, because I felt like in doing so, it would open up people to watching way more movies than they would have before. Some of mine are a little bit basic. I had to throw a couple of those on there, but most of them are a lot more fun, so I hope you stick around to find out what the challenge is. I will also be sharing the movies that I am going to watch as part of this challenge. But also, if you're new, you might have thought in the beginning, I'm sorry, the what members? Yes, the cult members. I can't believe that you clicked on this video thinking that this was just your average horror channel. No, you're mistaken. Here on this channel, all of my subscribers are devoted cult members. I don't know what to tell you, okay? A lot of people wanted to sacrifice their soul to me, and I was like, you know what? I am up to the task. I will safeguard those. I will be your unholy ruler. That is no problem with me. And all you have to do to join is click subscribe. It's literally the easiest cult to join in the entire world. Just ask my members, I'm sure they're commenting down below. Now, to my devoted followers, you might have noticed that I look a little bit different in this video than I did maybe in my last one. I'm literally shooting this video in June because that's how excited I was 4 months ago for this month. I came up with this challenge back in June, and I thought that it would be pertinent to shoot a bunch of my spooky season content ahead of time, that way I could ensure maximum content in October. Because that's the kind of creator that I am. I'm always looking out for you, my spooky little children. I'll make sure that you're fed this month. So without further ado, let's get into Haunted Hippies October Watchlist Challenge! Woo! Jazz hands. I thought that I would start things off really easy with October 1st, and the first challenge is watch a horror movie that is set in fall. This felt like the first appropriate theme of the month because it kind of dips your toes into the spooky season. Now, I will have probably been watching fall-related movies all through September as well, but I decided to go with one of the most fall-feeling movies of all time, both because it's dripping in orange and other earthy tones, but also because it holds a lot of nostalgia. I am personally going to be watching Hocus Pocus, and you can too, totally, you can copy me, no worries. This movie just so gets me into the Halloween spooky spirit. As a witch who loves witch movies, I can think of no better way to kick off October. Now for October 2nd, our second challenge, we have a back-to-school horror movie. This feels appropriate because a lot of kids are going back to school in August and September. It's still early in the month, therefore probably early in the semester. There are so many movies in this category to choose from. A close second and third were going to be The Craft and The Faculty. Those are both excellent back-to-school horror movies, very much have that school setting, that vibe. But I decided to go with a horror movie with a college setting, and that would be Urban Legend. If you're unfamiliar, this movie came out 2 years after Scream, so it very much feels like Scream. It has that late 90s slasher vibe. But this university is dealing with a bunch of gruesome killings, and so one girl is trying to get to the bottom of it, because all of the killings seem to follow the pattern of various urban legend stories. This is also one of those movies that's just kind of so bad that it's good, but I still feel like it's super underrated. This movie also briefly stars Robert Englund, who of course is another horror icon. For any dweebs out there that don't know, he plays Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. No matter how short of a time he's there, his presence just always adds to the atmosphere. It briefly stars Brad Dourif as well, another horror legend. Plus, I haven't seen that movie in a few years, and I've only watched it the one time, so I'm very much due for a watch. Alright, on the 3rd of the month, I thought it would be fun to watch a comfort horror movie. If you couldn't tell, these first few days are to kind of just ease you into the spooky mood. You know, we dipped our toes in with the first few days, now we're kind of stepping a foot in. So for me, one of the ultimate comfort horror movies is House of Wax from 2005. Now I have a plethora of other comfort horror movies I could have chosen from. Another good substitute for this would be just a dark comedy that you enjoy. That's if you don't really understand what a comfort horror movie is, if you're newer to the genre, because you might have heard that and you're like, what? How can a horror movie be comforting? Oh, you'll learn, babes, you'll learn. House House of Wax is very comforting to me because it stars Paris Hilton for one thing, and that just gives me a big sense of nostalgia because growing up, she was like the party girl and just one of the first people to be famous for no reason. So I was just always very aware of her and like Lindsay Lohan and Kim Kardashian. So the fact that she's in this movie weirdly just reminds me of my childhood, but also that guy from Gilmore Girls and Supernatural, and his name is Dean in both of those shows, so I call him Dean. Also, Chad Michael Murray is there, another icon from the early 2000s. It's just very, very comforting to me. It's a stupid movie, but it's also amazing. It has incredible practical effects for the gore. Just overall a good time. I'll always love that movie. For October 4th, I dare you to watch a movie that scares you. This has to be one of those movies that no matter how many times you watch it, it always gets under your skin a little bit. For me, one of those movies is The Blair Witch Project, but I decided to go with a more psychological thriller for my choice, so that would be The Invisible Man. This movie will never not scare me because it just hits so close to home. This is probably one of the biggest collective fears that women face, is suffering having an abusive partner. Elizabeth Moss is also just the most empathetic character possible because her acting is flawless. This movie is constantly playing with you because there are certain answers that you'll never get. Which scenes are the Invisible Man in? We will never actually have that answered. There are some where it's more obvious, of course, but some scenes earlier on we will literally never know. So no matter how many times you watch it, you're just constantly scanning every corner of the screen. It gets my heart racing. I think I've seen it 3 times. I am excited for the 4th. So since that one is gonna be kind of a lot, we're gonna walk back. We're kind of just mixing up the vibe throughout the month. Up next on the 5th, I want you to watch a stop motion animation horror movie. And if you're a subscriber, you already know which one I'm watching. Coraline. Okay. For me, there's pretty much no other option besides Corpse Bride. However, I'm going with Coraline because that's the only stop motion movie that scares the shit out of me. Corpse Bride, I love. It's just this wonderful musical romance. Ugh. And I've loved that movie since I was a child. And with Coraline, well, I wouldn't say that I loved that movie as a child because my dad took me to see it in theaters when, I don't know, I was like 10 or 11. I was traumatized. And I still think it is one of the most gorgeous horror movies ever made. Henry Selick, my cap's off to you, my friend. Other options, as I said, Corpse Bride, Wendell and Wild, Paranorman. Oh, Frankenweenie. God, I adore Frankenweenie. That one is actually also up there with Coraline. I don't know, which one do I love more? I don't actually know, but you have good options. I just went with the one that actually really scares me. Here is where we start getting really creative. I've never seen this on a challenge watch list before. I want you to watch a made-for-TV horror movie. There are more good ones out there than you might think. For example, Summer of Fear, directed by Wes Craven. John Carpenter also has a ton of made-for-TV movies. Someone's Watching Me is my 3rd favorite Carpenter movie ever made, for example. However, because I haven't seen it in several years and I've been dying for a rewatch, I'm gonna watch Creepshow. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that was made for TV. No, you probably did. The people watching this probably did. This anthology contains 5 short but terrifying tales. There are stories about outer space and monsters and weird sort of fungal viruses. There's a lot to love in Creepshow. Other options for this day could also include your favorite Disney Channel original horror movies. That includes movies like Halloween Town, a true classic. But moving on the 7th, I would like you to find a horror movie with a haunted object. I've never been super big on haunted object movies. One that I have always loved is Possession from 2012. There's just something so bleak and messed up about that movie. I've shown it to a lot of people because it's also one of the only other movies that has scared me every single time I watch it, but I think that that's because one of the major horror elements of it is moths, and I hate moths. I mean, I don't hate moths, but like they just really freak me out, but it's not by choice. So anyways, since I've seen that one a bajillion times, I decided to go with Drag Me to Hell. This is a crazy Sam Raimi movie that I've only seen one time, and I'll be honest, I didn't really love it the first time, but now I have since become a massive Evil Dead fan, and I just want to give it another go. That movie contains, I believe, like a haunted button, and I don't remember a lot about it. A lot of people have told me that that is actually their favorite Evil Dead film because it feels so much like it's a part of that franchise, so I'm excited to give it another watch. But moving on to October 8th, I want you to watch a movie set in a forest. There are a plethora of horror movies that take place in a forest. I want you to challenge yourself here not to choose a cabin in the woods type horror movie because that is a challenge for another day. I'm personally going with Gretel and Hansel, directed by Oz Perkins. This was one of my favorite horror movies of 2020. I adore it. It stars Sophia Lillis from the It franchise, and if you're someone that's fine with there being very little plot and mostly just vibes, then you're gonna love this movie. It's very trippy. At one point, these 2 children literally take magic mushrooms, so of course this movie is right up my alley. And the forest setting is just immaculate once they make their way to the witch's cabin as well. Ugh. I guess that one could also qualify as cabin in the woods horror, but you do spend majority of the time out in the forest. So whatever, bend the rules however you may. Moving on to the 9th of the month, I would like you to watch a movie with your favorite villain. My favorite villain has rarely ever changed. I was almost gonna watch Bride of Chucky on this day, but I was like, you know what, Kylie, don't even lie to yourself. Okay, you love Chucky and you love Tiffany, but they're not your favorites. My favorite villain of all time is the one Hannibal Lecter, and so I'll be rewatching The Silence of the Lambs. Everyone already knows how good this movie is. I don't need to tell you why. For a lot of you guys, I would imagine you would choose a Halloween movie or a Friday the 13th movie. I would challenge you maybe to kind of look outside of that, because I do have a couple franchise challenges later in the month, including literally on the next day, on the 10th, because I want you to watch a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And maybe don't go with your favorite. Maybe give one a rewatch that you were a little bit iffy on the first time. For example, I am watching A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. And you can do this with the A Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and a lot of horror franchises, because some of the big three, the movies just like really don't connect. I've seen this movie twice. The first time, I really wasn't that much of a fan, but the second time around, I loved it. I loved all the queer undertones. I love Jesse so much as our main character, and it's really unique. You know, you don't often get a boy as the lead of a slasher film. This isn't necessarily me telling you to try Freddy's Dead yet again, because I don't know if that movie would ever really be good for anyone. But maybe try Dream Master again. Yeah, it's goofy, but it's a lot of fun. Okay, on to the 11th. I'm excited for this day because I want you to watch a movie starring your crush. I found a horror movie that is just so many lovely things wrapped all into one. First of all, one of my main horror crushes is Devon Sawa, and I found a dark comedy that he stars in that takes place on Halloween. It's also a stoner cult classic, and that would be Idle Hands. This movie slaps, and you know, it's not a masterpiece, but it's just such a good time. Slacker teen Anton Tobias has his right hand possessed by a demonic force, and his hand becomes an appendage of death. I can't believe it was so late in life for me to finally check out that movie. I am so excited to watch it again. I watched it for the first time earlier this year, not even close to Halloween season, but like I said, remember it's Halloween all year round on this channel. I thought that this would just be a really fun category because maybe there's a horror movie starring your crush that you haven't seen yet somehow. For example, another one, I have a crush on Nicholas Hoult. Did you know that he stars in a 2014 dark comedy called Warm Bodies? It's very stupid and it's very fun and I love it a lot. Or, you know, Samara Weaving has starred in a lot of dark comedies. You could also watch Midsommar with Florence Pugh, Will Poulter, just a lot of beautiful people. Stephen Yeun, Keke Palmer. You could watch Nope, or, combine Stephen Yeun and Samara Weaving and watch Mayhem. That movie is severely underrated. Point is, there are a lot of options there. On the 12th, I would like you to branch out a bit and watch a horror movie from the 1950s. It's one of my personal favorite decades of horror. There is so much there that is just so underrated as it's kind of fallen off over the years. I will personally be watching House on Haunted Hill, starring the horror legend Vincent Price. A rich oddball named Frederick Loren has a proposal for 5 guests at a possibly haunted mansion. Show up, survive a night filled with scares, and receive $10,000 each. This movie is also free to watch on Tubi as well, so if you're in the States, you have no excuse. My other personal favorites from the 1950s are House of Wax, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Ooh, there's so much good stuff from that decade. Now on the 13th, this year, we have a Friday the 13th in the month of October. The next one I'm pretty sure is not until September of next year. So big deal, everybody just calm down, everybody relax. Obviously, this being the case, I think that this is an appropriate day to watch a Friday the 13th movie. It's perfect timing as well because Never Hike Alone 2 is coming out on Friday the 13th. If you're not familiar with the first Never Hike Alone, it is part of a series on the Womp Stomp Films channel. These are fan-made Friday the 13th horror films and they are fantastic. I actually enjoy them a bit more than the original franchise, so I hope that you check that one out. And if I have time to watch one more movie that evening, I will probably watch the final chapter because that's one of my favorites of the franchise. My absolute favorite is definitely part 6. Another favorite of mine is part 7, The New Blood. But the final chapter, you just can never really go wrong with that one. I also thought that would be fun if I could possibly watch that one and maybe part 6 before Never Hike Alone 2 comes out because it's all part of the Tommy timeline, you know? Anyways, very self-explanatory day, so moving on to the 14th. On the 14th, I would like you to watch a Wes Craven film, and preferably one that's a little bit more underrated. For example, Red Eye, although I'm not going with this one because it's not as much straightforward horror, it is definitely more of a thriller, but it's kind of genre bending, stars Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy, so underrated. But another one that I find to be underrated is The People Under the Stairs, which is what I will be watching. When young Fool breaks into the home of his family's greedy and uncaring landlords, he discovers a disturbing scenario where incestuous adult siblings have mutilated a number of boys and kept them imprisoned under stairs in their large, creepy house. So there's a lot going on with that one, but it also deals with these really heavy themes about like gentrification. The lead character is a young black boy, which even now you don't typically see that. So it's a movie that has this really great perspective. The acting is phenomenal. Some of the most underrated and iconic villains also in that movie. It's one that I highly recommend. I can't believe that more people don't love that one. Well, I guess I can because, yeah, okay, A Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, they would kind of overshadow that, I suppose. But check it out if you've never seen it. Okay, on to the 15th. Now you may watch a Cabin in the Woods horror movie. I do feel like cabins and the forest and all of that really do contribute to a fall feeling. If you love this subgenre, then maybe seek out something that you haven't seen before. For instance, Honeymoon. It was directed by Lee Janiak, who did the Fear Street trilogy. But a lot of people don't know about that one, and it has a great atmosphere, amazing acting, kind of falters on the ending, but definitely worth watching. Being that I already have done a top 10 list this year where I also watched a ton of Cabin in the Woods horror movies that I had never seen before, I'm deciding to go with one that is tried and true. I will be watching the Evil Dead reboot remake from 2013. This isn't necessarily my favorite Cabin in the Woods horror movie, but it is definitely the bloodiest. It also has one of the strongest atmospheres of any forest or Cabin in the Woods horror movie. I love the fog, just the feeling of it is truly immaculate. So that's why I'm personally going with Evil Dead. Now on the 16th, we have a little bit more of a creative category. I want you to watch a horror movie where mom and dad are acting funny. One from this year that if you missed it would be Skinamarink. That's definitely a movie where mom and dad are acting hella strange. You could go with a dark comedy like Mom and Dad, one of my favorite dark comedies, or you could be basic like me yet again and watch The Shining. It's just a tough movie to beat, especially when you're getting into spooky season. Yes, it does have much more of a winter feeling than a fall feeling, but nonetheless, there is kind of that transition from fall to winter towards the beginning of the movie, and it's just a classic. Like, literally, why am I having to explain myself to you? So let's just move right on from that one. On the 17th, I would like you to watch a horror movie with a queer lead. This is the first movie on my list that I haven't seen before, but I wanted to challenge myself to seek out a movie that I hadn't seen for this one because we always need more queer cinema. So I'm gonna watch The Retreat. My friend Tiago on the Royal Horror Channel has recommended this movie to me for a long time, so finally gonna see what this one is all about. In this one, a couple travel to a cabin to spend the weekend with friends, but upon arrival, the friends are nowhere to be found. The couple find themselves in a fight for their lives when they encounter militant extremists who are determined to exterminate them. Sounds kind of intense. I don't know if it'll be for me, but I'm feeling daring. But another really fun one that I feel like went under a lot of people's radars earlier this year is Summoning Sylvia. That one's much more of a comedy than a horror movie, but it follows all these gays at a bachelor party and they invite a straight person and a ghost into the home while they're there. It's as wacky and fun and endearing as you would think. But another tried and true movie with a queer lead that is just so painfully underrated is What Keeps You Alive. That is also Cabin in the Woods type horror, but who cares? Don't look up anything about that movie. Literally go in as blind as you possibly can and just enjoy the ride. Okay, anyways, moving on. On the 18th, let's go back to basics and watch a paranormal movie. I've personally decided to go with one that's pretty goofy. You can go with one that's much scarier if you so desire, but I'll be watching the 13 Ghosts remake from 2001. It stars one of my crushes, so a little bit of an overlap here, but Matthew Lillard, I love you. This movie is just so goofy and so stupid. There is so much awful CGI effects, but then the ghosts look wonderful. The ghosts are done practically. It's this really weird blend. It feels like a Disney Channel original horror movie that is R-rated for some reason. It's just one of the weirdest horror movies ever, but it's so comforting. I love it. If you couldn't tell, I love a movie that's so bad that it's good. There are obviously a ton of other paranormal movies to choose from. Probably don't need to rattle any off. So moving on to the 19th. On the 19th, I would like you to watch a John Carpenter movie. Watch one that you haven't seen before. For example, the one that I told you about earlier, Someone's Watching Me. That one is a fantastic Hitchcockian black and white made-for-TV film. And it's wonderful, and I bet you didn't know it came out the same year as Halloween. But I will personally be trying to watch a movie that I didn't love the first time around, but I did enjoy it, and I think I would like it more on a second watch. That would be Christine, which I know is iconic. I know that most people already super love that one. I've just never really been one of those people, so I want to be. I'm gonna try to do it. Because a lot of other movies have been an acquired taste for me. For example, The Shining. I didn't always love that movie. So with Christine, I'm gonna try again. We're chipping away. Maybe you could try out one of his more unknown titles, like Vampires or Prince of Darkness. Both very strange movies. I prefer Prince of Darkness out of the two of those. But he has so much range, so I feel like there is something for everyone in his catalog. Alright, moving on to the 20th, just 11 days from Halloween, I would like you to watch an anthology horror movie. There aren't a crazy amount to choose from, and so I'm probably being basic here, but I'm going with Trick or Treat. This movie is also just so comforting. It has such good fall time vibes and immaculate Halloween time vibes. In fact, a lot of the horror movies from here on out are going to be movies that take place on Halloween because we're just getting further into the spirit. Plus, I love Sam. I just think that Trick or Treat is a really solid annual watch. You could also try out one of the VHS movies. You could try out ABCs of Death. Those franchises have never really been for me, but maybe you would like them. Moving on to the 21st, I think you should watch a movie with a scary clown. Most people will probably gravitate towards it, and I do not blame you. Some people might try to watch a horror movie they've never seen before with a clown in it, like Clown from Eli Roth. I've never seen that one, but I did decide to be a little bit more basic today. I'm gonna be watching Terrifier. Of course, most people know about Terrifier these days, but I'll just give you a little synopsis anyways. If you somehow don't know about Art the Clown, he just wreaks havoc on this little town on Halloween night. There really is not much of a plot, just a lot of really gross, gory vibes, and Art the Clown being a fucking menace. You'll also understand why I went with that one and not one that I hadn't seen before very soon. But Art the Clown is just always a bad vibe. Not to mention, I think it's important to further just familiarize myself with that franchise because the new one is coming out next year and it's gonna have a huge budget. I mean, this franchise is about to blow up. It already kind of did last year, remember? So anyways, on the 22nd, I think it would be a fun time to watch a horror movie from the 80s. I'll be watching Poltergeist from 1982. This also overlaps with a lot of other movies. It is a comfort movie for me. It's one of my favorite movies from childhood. It's a paranormal horror movie. So it was just the perfect choice for me, but obviously there is a vast catalog of movies you could choose from that era. I maybe should have gone with a movie that I hadn't seen before, but I haven't watched Poltergeist in like 2 years now, so I'm hankering for a rewatch. It's one of my favorites. But if you're new to the genre, then maybe check out a movie that's been a huge gap for you. Like if you've never seen An American Werewolf in London, or Fright Night, or The Funhouse. Obviously, so much to choose from on that day. Now on the 23rd, I would like you to find a horror movie directed by a woman. Of course, I think a lot of you guys would go with Julia Ducournau, who did Raw and Titane. If you haven't seen those yet, you definitely should. Now those movies are not for me, but I do recognize they have a lot to offer. A lot of other people love those movies, so if you haven't watched them, then you should. But those are not super Halloween-y to me. You could also go with any of the Slumber Party Massacre movies, all the way up to the remake that came out a few years ago. You could go with Jennifer's Body, or The Invitation, or the Fear Street trilogy. I'm going with something a little bit more obscure, but in my opinion has a much stronger Halloween vibe. I'm gonna be watching Satanic Panic, this little weird low-budget dark comedy. A minimum wage delivery girl is forced into a night-long battle with the affluent leaders of a suburban community after discovering that they are all part of a satanic cult. I'm not gonna lie to you, this movie is very bad, but it stars the guy that plays Derek, Sydney's boyfriend in Scream 2, if you were wondering what he was up to these days. I find a lot of it to kind of drag and just be so weird that it's weird, but a lot of it is just so bonkers, balls to the wall stupid that it's just a hoot. I think when I rated it on Letterboxd, I probably gave it like 2 or 2.5 stars, but I still really liked it. So maybe we can be twinsies and you can check that one out too. On the 24th, I think that you should watch a movie that a Gore-Hound would love. Watch something real bloody. This one might overlap also with, you know, watching a horror movie from the 1980s. This one could overlap with a lot of stuff. Maybe your comfort horror movie is super gory. I'm personally going with Terrifier 2 because I just wanted to rewatch the Terrifier movies. So now you may understand why I didn't go with a new movie that I hadn't seen before for the Clown Day. So while these categories might seem kind of oddly specific, they're actually quite broad. House of Wax would also probably fall into this one, but I don't know that another movie really stacks up against the Terrifier movies. Well, I'm sure that's not true, but they're not really the movies that I would seek out, you know? Anyway, that one's simple enough. On the 25th, I think it would be fun if you found a horror movie that is set during a single night. A lot of Halloween movies do take place on Halloween just over the course of a single night, so the one that I've chosen is one that is really underrated. I mean, it's not a great movie, but Bloodfest, this came out a couple of years ago. It's a dark comedy, and it very much wants to be Scream, but it's nowhere near as good. But it's still worth watching, I think. It follows these high school kids as they go to this horror festival called Bloodfest, and it becomes just a lot more real than they were really expecting. It also definitely has that meta-satire element in it, if that's something that you like. That one actually is a lot more specific, so you might have a little bit of a harder time, but that's part of the challenge. I just spit everywhere. What just happened? Like a glob just like flew from my lips. Anyways, so on the next day, one of my personal favorites, on the 26th, I want you to watch a movie about witchcraft. There are so many movies in this subgenre that are so fantastic. If you'd like more of my recommendations, I did do a live stream earlier this year with Kira and Mika from the Double Feature podcast. We did our top 10 witch horror horror movies, and they had some really good ones I had never heard of. I brought up some really underrated ones as well, but for this challenge, I'm gonna be basic, and I'm gonna watch one of my favorite movies of all time, Practical Magic. It's only 6 days before Halloween. It has the most immaculate fall-time vibe, maybe the only one better than Hocus Pocus, and it's just a really, really feel-good movie. A comfort movie as well, and stars I'm sure we share some of the crushes in this movie. Very straightforward, but I'll just really quickly tell you a few of my other favorite witch movies. Obviously watch The Craft if you've never seen that, because that's crazy. But The Witch, Robert Eggers' The Witch, God, I love that movie. I just was in the mood for something a little bit more upbeat, because that movie is a little bit depressing. Anyway, on to the 27th, I think that you should watch a Whodunnit. I'm straying a little bit from the horror movie realm, just because literally every other movie this month is a horror movie that I'm watching. I know that a lot of you will probably pick a movie from the Scream franchise, and that's a wonderful choice. I personally am gonna rewatch Knives Out. I have not watched this movie since it came out, and I loved it back then. I don't know why I haven't watched it since. So now is the time, especially because it really has that fall-time vibe, and it's about murder and mayhem and mystery. It has a dynamite cast. Like, I mean, you already probably know that it's a really good movie, right? It gives me fall-time vibes. Maybe it doesn't for you, but that's fine. We're different people, you and I. Now for the 28th, this one somewhat overlaps with the 27th actually, because on the 28th, I want you to watch a Scooby-Doo movie. Now the Scooby-Doo with the best fall-time vibes out of any of them by far is Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. This is also where the band The Hex Girls was first realized, icons, but seeing as I did rewatch that movie last year and I even dressed up as a Hex Girl, yes I looked good by the way, I will not be rewatching that one this year, but instead going with my actual favorite Scooby-Doo movie of all time. Obviously Scooby-Doo, we have another Matthew Lillard movie on this list. Had to do it, I had to do it. I had to go with my favorite just because I also haven't seen that one in a few years. It also literally never gets old, and what's horrifying about that is that my boyfriend has never seen it. So of course I am showing him that movie. Who do you think I am? Anyways, let me settle down. You probably already could have guessed that that was the movie that I was gonna choose. Moving on, we are in the last 3 days of October now, on to the 29th. We're just going for all the Halloween vibes, all the comfort, all the good feelings. So for number 29, I want you to watch a horror movie from your childhood. You can go with anything here. Maybe your parents were kind of fucked up and they showed you Jaws at like age 7. My parents did that. Well, my dad and my grandpa. I'm looking at you, Dad. Or you can do what I'm choosing to do and watch one of your favorite Disney Channel original horror movies, Halloween Town. I already mentioned this movie today, but here we go again. I think a lot about October and spooky season, why I love it so much is because it takes me back to my childhood. I have always loved spooky season when all the little girls were running around dressed like princesses. I was a little witch with a giant warty nose prosthetic on my face. Or I was an undead cheerleader or a vampire with fake blood dribbling down my face. So I feel like being extra nostalgic and watching Halloween Town. I remember back in the day with cable TV when a new movie would drop and it would be an event. Having commercial breaks in the movie, oh, what a time. The kids these days will never understand having to run to the bathroom and rush to pee before the ad break is over. And when I was a kid, I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. I want to live here amongst the monsters. So this year I want to go back. I'm going back to Halloween Town, baby. On to the next though, on to the 30th of October. I want you to watch a movie from the Halloween franchise. Simple, basic, I know. I'm gonna go with Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. I feel like that one has some of the strongest fall atmosphere from the entire franchise. You actually feel like you're in the Midwest as opposed to the rest of the franchise where you're like, we're definitely still in LA. George P. Wilbur is also one of my favorite actors that ever played Michael Myers. So I think that instead of revisiting the entire franchise this year, that's the one that I'm gonna watch. Now, of course, there is gonna be some overlap here with the final day of the month, October 31st, Halloween. This is an easy one. Watch a movie that takes place on Halloween. For some of you guys, I kind of structured this so that you could do the last 3 days all Halloween movies, like from the Halloween franchise, because maybe you started watching those as a kid. But I also structured it for people who are not necessarily fans of the Halloween franchise. In which case, on the 30th, then maybe try a movie from the franchise you've never seen, or maybe one that you weren't sure about on the first watch. But maybe you'll be like me, where on the 31st, you're gonna watch another horror movie that you've never seen before. So the movie that takes place on Halloween that I'm watching is Hellfest. This is one that I think you guys have recommended to me, my friends have recommended this to me, and I just have never seen it. So we're filling in a few gaps this Halloween season. On Halloween night, 3 young women and their respective boyfriends head to Hellfest, a ghoulish traveling carnival that features a labyrinth of rides, games, and mazes. They soon face a bloody night of terror when a mass serial killer turns the horror theme park into his own personal playground. This movie is also free to watch on Tubi, so my American audience, you're welcome. welcome. I'm excited to finally check that one out. I feel like it might be kind of similar to Bloodfest, and maybe it'll be so bad that it's good, or maybe it'll be a little bit more similar to Haunt, which is an excellent haunted maze movie. So highly recommend that one. I think that also takes place all on Halloween night as well. But that does it. There is the entire list of Haunted Hippies October Watchlist Challenge. If you would like to find that and screenshot it, then follow me on Instagram. I'm at Haunted Hippie Horror. I hope that you're so excited for this Halloween season. I know that I am. I mean, I'm shooting this in June, for Christ's sake. I'm speaking way into the future right now, which is ironic because you're hearing me speak way from the past. But that's how excited I am. I hope that you can feel it emanating off of me and that you get equally as excited. I have so many good horror movies to watch this month, and I cannot wait to get into it. And I would love to know which movies you're choosing to watch from this challenge. Maybe you don't do it for the entire month, but maybe one of these categories kind of spoke to you, or maybe one of the movies I mentioned spoke to you. Let me know what you're watching this month. Of course, this doesn't include all of the new releases. There are going to be a plethora of those this month in theaters and on streaming, so I myself might even deviate from this challenge. It just was a good idea for a video, like, let's be honest. I also have a lot of exciting content coming out this month, so join the cult, I beg of you. Anyway, if you would like even more bonus content from me, you can find that on my Patreon. I'm sure you can see their lovely names scrolling on the screen right now. These are my patrons. These people keep me funded on days when I am not streaming, when I am not posting a video, so majority of the time, really, when I am doing my research, my writing, all that kind of stuff. Or when I'm busy off making short horror films, they fund those projects as well. As a thank you, like I said, there is bonus content that comes out on Patreon, usually 4 to 6 videos every single month. But if that's not for you, then like I said, check out my social media. My Instagram is definitely the best place to get all the updates, all the news, like I said, where this challenge will be posted. I'll have a nice template on there so you can fill it out yourself. So come find me, track me down, come enjoy the content that I have on all platforms. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye!